Well, hello there, everyone. Here to show you right here of talking about for special attention right here, and I'm sure most of us will probably say too that a lot of times it's like that the first thing that you think about whenever you're going to be looking at something and maybe reading something though is that that even if you do look away, like look away maybe for just a few seconds or maybe anything such as a few. Yeah. If you were out at at dinner or something like that, or maybe working on something, and it's like a lot of times it seems like that you always a lot of times to think about is just toward it. If you missed anything in particular, so it sure seems that way that a lot of times that anything that mentioned right here, and it sure seems that way that Mike had. I don't know if everybody here has read all this right here, but talk about for the hard work measured based on what goes with the process ongoing. So this right here is a letter right here talking about talk about the future and all that, but it sure seems that way that whenever you do start a conversation a lot of times, and let's just say that if you were to start that conversation by stating towards something like, a future is also about what I see, but so it sure seems that way. If I were to highlight that right there and just say, let's say go edit and then highlight that, you talk about for information technology, but it sure seems that way that whenever it comes to understanding, you're talking about something and then trying to get a better understanding about something, and it sure seems that way that that whenever it comes to I'm not trying to make that bigger, I'm trying to highlight that. So highlight that and color highlighter. I'll go ahead and yellow. But anyway, okay, right there. But anyway, it sure seems that way that whenever you're trying to pick a topic of some sort, and it sure seems that way that the future is what we make of the possibility, and so it sure seems that way a lot of times that whenever we're going to be talking about something in particular, and let's just say that something in particular is maybe going to be about something something that you may know about that maybe somebody else that doesn't really know about or quite understand, and so that's why it sure seems that way that each time I think about that, and I could probably say too that if I'm going to be writing a letter talking about the future, though, it sure seems that way that well, really, that you're going to maybe be talking about that smartphone or that tablet that you use on like an everyday basis, and want to know too that what about it that makes it seem like that you're really familiar with what it does, and so it sure seems that way that just a little bit like a show and tell source of situation, but it sure seems that way that each time you learn something new, it sure seems that way that I include right here, talk about for special attention, because it sure seems that way to where that whenever it comes to special attention, and also anything that you may have missed, and so how do we usually feel whenever we do, Mike, if we wind up missing something? And a lot of times it seems like that if you get real busy with something and you try to catch up with what's been going on, and like 102 that the first thing is to where that if you quite you may not get something, or you may not understand something quite yet, and so it sure seems that way that like I'll even tell everybody here else too, is that if you're going to be so let's just say that this letter right here is supposed to represent my voice, right? So let's just say if I were to be talking in about maybe 45 sentences or something like that about something that about maybe the showing the results of maybe an experiment that I was working with, or maybe something about, a certain goal or achievement or something like that. And it sure seems that way that whenever if I'm going to be working on it in 102, that yeah, that how do you know if it works or not? But still but whenever it comes to talk about for our technology on the go right here, and for our tools, and they are used to do our jobs and do our jobs right. And so if I were to be writing any source of sentence right here, talk about the future, right? And so it's like, yeah, that a lot of times it's like whenever you are writing something, there's really a difference between that what you assume, and then maybe what could be the possibility compared to what is actually happening. And so it sure seems that way that do you kind of call that just a little bit of journalism, or do you kind of call that as toward typical writing? And I'm like, yeah, if I can change the font and just a little bit right here. But if I were to go ahead and include right here, change the font to like maybe Abra, or something like that. But still, if I were to change the font right there, and let's just say that if I were to put on here, talk about the future though, is that that for what's soon to come in the future though, is that to where our smartphones our smartphones now have that ability to identify. So what exactly does that mean? And like anybody thinking too, that if you're going to be writing like that, and it sure seems that way, that number one, that if we're talking about maybe anything like a coupon or something like that, that why is it that maybe the print is going to be at about that small right there, then compared to like if it, like say that if you're going to be writing a document about something and at 102, that terms of use that apply a lot of times, you would usually see that on the back of an advertisement or something like that. But still that so it sure seems that way that whenever we speak about attention, right, and but still that but it sure seems that way that what does it usually mean whenever if you were to miss something, and like everybody else might even say that that something that you could not follow up with it just yet, and that someone will ask to explain the details. So it sure seems that way a lot of times, that if you're going to be writing kind of like that right there, and thinking as to where, okay, the details right there, and and maybe if we cannot really see that right there, but still it sure seems that way, that how do we usually, I'm like, people might even think too that anything that you may have missed from somebody, from what they were talking about and all that. But it sure seems that way that whenever it comes to understanding about our future though, that you are pretty much are generating information in your mind about what soon to come is. And a lot of times it sure seems that way, that really what is soon really to come is mainly about the fact about that the ability to work that with the internet connection, Wi-Fi and internet connection. So it sure seems that way, that the same document that I were to write on here, and let's just say that like everybody else might say that all about you, but if I were to say on here that you know, if you appear, if you appear online, so if you appear online, then you can actually, so it sure seems that way whenever you do type a document, and let's just say that this is a Word document right here, but let's just say if you export that, maybe import that into like a conversation, like if we're talking about maybe like a OneNote conversation or something like that, then maybe people, your attendees would be able to read those memos right here, like that, this wording right here. And I want to know too that a lot of it may be something that maybe that not everybody is going to know what is it that you're talking about and all that, but it sure seems that way. That why is it that we think about that to where that if you're taking down notes and maybe talking about a story though, or anything that you want to talk about, talk about the future though, that a lot of times it seems like that you think for sure that you go ahead and want to write something down, write a story, and just think it, to yourself about that story, something that you want to speak up to your audience about. And one of those is maybe going to be about is to where you start talking about something. But a lot of people may want to know too that what does it usually mean, if you do wind up missing something, and a lot of times that usually means that that's something that somebody else that doesn't understand, or something that they're trying to follow up with and trying to get a better understanding about what you're talking about. And but it sure seems that way that special attention. And so it sure seems that way that that whenever it comes to understanding about attention, right? And you want to know too that that whenever when we talk about special attention, we're also maybe talking about is to where that that somebody is counting on you to do the job, or if anything, maybe disability or anything like that. But let's just say that when I'm talking about for special attention to her, that people are waiting. I'm like, they're waiting for you before they can proceed, and like before you can proceed, that they're waiting for you to be able to come. I'm like, just to be able to show them how to do something. So special attention can be explained in a number of ways, right? But still, the way one of those ways I'm talking about is toward it somebody somebody cannot they cannot proceed with the job until that until I'm like, so it sure seems that way that if you're going to be maybe working in maybe in a tutor room or somewhere like that, or maybe in a conference room, and if you're trying to show somebody something a lot of times, and it's like, well, they can't move on because if they don't really know, from that point of perspective. And so it sure seems that way that that point of perspective. And if that point of perspective is really the answer key right here, point of perspective. So what do I mean by that? Well, that means by is to where that that the point of perspective, to where that you're just that you're trying to point out something, to better explain a little bit more, to somebody. And so it sure seems that way that that you start talking about something, and you're not. Whenever you first start the conversation, you may not, be talking to a group of 5 other clients, or you may not even be talking to a group of audiences. You may just be thinking, to yourself, and just writing down a few ideas and all that about what you want to talk about. And so it sure seems that way that almost all the time that you think that you see better progress whenever you do whenever you actually study at your own time and just write down a few ideas about what you want to talk about and what you want to discuss. And it's like, the future is power right here. And I include that, just knowing as to where that, when we think about, like everybody else might even say that, what does that mean right there? What does that mean whenever you're going to be thinking about your future, though? Your future is power, right? And well, a lot of times, if everybody else may want to know too, what exactly do you mean by that? And for any reason at all, that for any source of power that you're talking about, what exactly is it that you're talking about? Well, I'm talking about is toward that from where I know what's going to be going on in the near future, and so it sure seems that way that whenever you, I'm like, yeah, we all should know too. The future is really what's powering a lot of these companies and businesses, right? Like any new products and new services and training and about, talk about for, climate change and so yeah, you talk about for future is power, right? But it sure seems that way that like anybody else might even ask me too, that what's one thing that you could maybe include just to kind of approach everybody else's attention though. And so let's just say that talk about for supercomputers, computers that know to develop an understanding for how we use them. And so it sure seems that way that if I were to say something on here about, a secure, like, yeah, a code, and, maybe and I can also put on here is to word that, create, so in case of anybody that may want to know, create or made up and, make up a special key. So if I were to put on here a special key right here. So if I were to say that, well, what exactly does that mean right there? Special key. And it sure seems that way that, what does that mean right there? Well, what do I mean by that? What I mean by is toward it, that you make up a special key. Why do you think that I would even want to make it up? But, still, that like everybody else might even want to know too, that whenever you create, if you were to put that like, and like a dash right there, I'll go and put that right there for underline and dash right there. So if your teacher were to be, maybe be asking you, giving you that opportunity to where you can test out something and maybe just to see how it works and anything such as what's called test results and everything, but create, make up right here. So it's like, that to me though, that's something that like everybody else would say too, that would you really need to make up something or to create something just to be able to solve a situation. But like anybody else would say too, that for any reason at all, that if there's going to be any source of activity that you're going to be using, though, you're working with, and you would maybe pick anything portion on that activity to where it really interests you a lot of times. And to me, it was really about to create and make up, your own. I'm like, so yeah. So it seems like to me though that giving me that ability to where I can speak up from my own mind, that just to share with everybody else. But like everybody else might even say that, do you think that progress like that would be better compared to going by the requirements all the time? But still, so it sure seems that way that that every time I think about that though, that it's like if I were to say create, make up a special key right there, somebody's going to maybe tell me that okay, are they missing something here? I don't quite get that, or I don't understand. Well, what make up what? And so if I were to include like that right there, and let's just say that if I were to maybe set that maybe for like a subtitle or something like that, maybe for a training or something like that, and people are gonna maybe say that if you set that for like any source of training, to where that in bold and 102 that if you were to set that to like a training key and so like create, make up something, a special key code or something like that. So it sure seems that way that if I were to start out the key code by saying star and maybe include like maybe an 8 and maybe a certain character of a letter or something like that, And like everybody else might even say too, that yeah, well, really, that certain characters, and I can go ahead and like yeah, a certain character. And let's just say if I were to say a G, the G or yeah, so something like that, or if I put like quotations or something like that. So a lot of times it seems like that if I were to say something like that right there, and like everybody else might even say too, that if you were to type that like on any source of like yeah, I honestly don't think that yeah, talk about for equations, but I think most of those codes are in a number form. 1 3. So if I were to say, yeah, this right here is supposed to be like a code, example right here of a code right there, and this right here is supposed to be just another example of maybe an access key or something like that, but still. So if you were to be thinking about that, and then at the same time be talking about yeah, a future is born right up here. So let's just say that if I were to be writing in this sentence right here toward I talk about maybe the first two sentences, I talk about what's soon to come in the near future, and talk about the things, the different experiments, and maybe the different things that to talk about, stuff like that, the type of achievements. So it sure seems that way, that if I were to be talking about a lot of that stuff, but then at the very bottom, that if I were to be given any source of examples of something, yeah, that you thought maybe if that was made up, or if you were just checking it out or anything like that. But it sure seems that way, that whenever you are writing something, or maybe working on something, who knows who could be looking at your work. It could be a client maybe working for a company, and they come across some of the work that you were doing. And so that's another reason why, like everybody else would say too, that is it important to appear online, like everybody else might say, that toward it, if you have an account, like if you're going to be online, maybe working on something, and let's just say that you're on network or something, and somebody's going to maybe be looking at your activity, and want to know too that do you think that maybe that's something that maybe that we all ordered for the future and all, but still that. So it sure seems that way, that a lot of times whenever I think about that, though, talk about for special attention right here, is that what I mean by attention, though, is like, yeah, that people are really treating you nicely, and then giving you the special treatment, and then maybe bringing something, like, yeah, buying you something, and maybe inviting you to do something. And so it's like, yeah, you talk about for special treatment, right? And a lot of times, like everybody else might even say too, that you probably experienced a lot of that, mainly only the fact about that if they're trying to ask you for a favor, or if it's anything that's related to can you show me how to do that? So it's like, yeah, that so it sure seems that way, that when we speak about technology a lot of times, it sure seems that way, that yeah, that whenever you speak about technology, that the first thing is first, where you go ahead and write a letter, and you just really want to say a few paragraphs about something that you're thinking about, something that comes to your mind or something like that. And want to know too that yeah, a future is also about what we see, what I see that everybody else cannot see. And so it sure seems that way, that each time I think about that yeah, that not everybody thinks and thinks and then talks about what I gotta talk about. So I'm gonna go ahead and write in here about toward it, knowing to develop an understanding about how and we use the technology, and talk about for the World Wide Web right here. But still, that if I were to be typing up a document right here, and let's just say that if in that document, if I were to include like maybe a hyperlink or something like that, if you were to be writing a letter and maybe send it to a client or a colleague, and it's going to include maybe a hyperlink to where that they're going to go ahead and be able to visit your page, and it would direct them to a company profile or something like that. So it sure seems that way, that not everybody's going to have any clue what you're talking about until that you get to the main point perspective. But it sure seems that way, that if you want to include like maybe a stamp or something like that, just to kind of get the person's attention on. But the first thing that somebody's going to maybe say is to where it is not associated with any mistakes, from the past. But still that so it sure seems that way, that when we speak about any sorts of writing or so, anything about work that we do, though, it sure seems that way, that somebody's going to maybe say that they're going to go and call off a mistake just because of the fact that, number one, if it doesn't work the way that you want it to work, for sure, that somebody's going to say that that's a mistake. Well, that's not, that was not the original plan on it. So a lot of times it seems like that you tell, you start a conversation about something, but still. But on the other hand, too, that when we talk about technology, though, technology is supposed to be a tool, right? It's supposed to be there, just to be able to give us our educational resources on, learning things, but still that. But at the same time, though, it seems like that somebody's going to go ahead and just be, opening up that sticker, like a 102 that, well, really, that you go ahead and include, mistakes. How many of us have really tried that, to where if you believe somebody made a mistake, or I'm like, so it's like, include a happy face right there or something like that. So how many of us will maybe even try to do that right there? Even on text messaging, that you go ahead and if what is the abbreviation for a mistake? And a lot of times it sure seems that way, that well, really, if I really want to know, and people may say that, if you want to go and write the abbreviation for a mistake, it's usually error, or something like that. Error or something, and you want to know too that you go and include parenthesis marks or anything like that. But it sure seems that way, that whenever you do first start a conversation with somebody, and it's like, that was a mistake because that's not what I said, or well, that's not what's really going on. And so when we speak about mistakes, I can also put a capital right there for capital M. So it's like, that include a sticker right there. And so it's like, how do we handle that a lot of times whenever it comes to if you're going to be writing a document and talking about something, and at 102, that is toward, if you go ahead and write that mistake right there for error right there, and maybe if you do include like maybe a smiley face, and also something to, I'm like, listen up, open your ears, and so it sure seems that way, that anything about what you call responsive or anything like that, but it sure seems that way, that whenever you're going to be writing a document talking about something, though, that what's one thing that you're going to be thinking about most of the time is that towards somebody else that could be reading over your documents, and that maybe that they're not going to have any clue of what you're talking about, and maybe what this is or what that is and all that. But it sure seems that way, that how do we usually feel when we want to have the opportunity to look at something, or maybe to see something? And a lot of times, how do we usually handle that whenever we think that we miss something? And what I mean by miss, though, is that you were not able to see something, and you were not able to follow up with all what was going on. And so it sure seems that way, that talk about for opportunities, right? And so like everybody else might even say, that point of perspective, you talk about for the opportunity. And for best opportunities. So it sure seems that way that yeah, for opportunities right there. And so it sure seems that way that each time I think about that though, it's like yeah, you're able to catch up with a lot of things that you may have missed, maybe from over the weekend or sometime like that, and maybe by reading up about the news, or just yeah, from your smartphone and tablet, you're able to read articles and all that. But it sure seems that way that that yeah, that whenever you do think of the things that you missed and at the time, that's like everybody else might even say too, that that's whenever the special treatment, yeah, anything special, special attention, the special treatment, to where that when people think of that is amazing, when somebody thinks of the things that you do as special, to where like everybody else might say that different ways of how you want to call special attention, right? And we may have experienced that before, to where that when we think about attention, that basically means is to where that yeah, somebody is asking you to sit down next to them, listen to what they got to say, look at what they want you to look at, and yeah, anything. I'm like, yeah, take their advice and their opinions, and that sort of thing. But it sure seems that way, that a lot of times it's like, yeah, that when we think about that a lot of this writing right here, there could have been about maybe 3 paragraphs right here that included not any quotes or anything about. Yeah, the first 3 paragraphs right here were just in my words only, before yeah, if somebody else wanted to go ahead and add something else right there on the bottom. So let's just say that if a lot of this wording right here, some of this wording right here was actually yeah, by somebody else's words. So it sure seems that way that you go ahead and start a conversation about something, and you go ahead and start writing in there in 102 that maybe after the first or second paragraph of a sentence, and maybe I don't know about maybe after the 5th paragraph of a sentence, and maybe somebody's going to want to go ahead and join the conversation and start saying a few words, something like that. So it sure seems that way that, based on my experience though, it's like a lot of times I'm always thinking about, okay, who could be reading this, and if they even know what that means right there. But if we do set the date right here, so this is another thing that I want to talk about right here, that why is it that most professional writers would maybe ask that question, to where that if you're going to be putting the date on a paper though, that you go ahead and put the title right there, put the title of the paper, to where that you go ahead and put on there for yeah, I can put on for dash right there. So if that right there is supposed to be the date right there, and not everybody's really going to know what that means, so it sure seems that way, by July 25th, 2024. What does that mean? Well, why do you want to use that? And so it sure seems that way that yeah, like usually you would see it on the top, but still. So, but it sure seems that way that yeah, like somewhere, like on the very top right here, if you want to go ahead and include yeah, go ahead and start like right here. Go ahead and start right there and include a space right here at the top, and just yeah, a tab or something, or yeah, put the date right there. It's usually on the right, but still, if I were to put on here for yeah, July, do I want to go ahead and use the numbers, or but still, I can just write on here, July 20th, of 2024 right here. So yeah, how many of us will maybe think about that to be very professional right there? And it's like, say, yeah, a future is born. So a lot of times you want to know too that do you think that maybe if you could go ahead and put the date on there instead of just giving it that document, that title, to where that future, talk about something for the future. But like everybody else might say, that if you were to put the date on there, then it maybe people would be able to read that. And a lot of times it sure seems that way, that, yeah, well, if you're having a meeting about something, then, you want to know too that, could you possibly, yeah, make that bigger or something. People can actually read that, and for, I don't know. Does that really seem no purpose? Do you really see any purpose of why you would want to do that? But, yeah, I got on here. Yeah, I got on there for August, right? We're going to put on there for July. And July 20th of 2024 right there. So if we were to put that a date for the future on there, and like everybody else would say that, you can really put really any year, right? But still, that 2025, 2028, maybe by 2030, you want to know too that whenever you set the date to a certain goal or to a calendar, I'm like, yeah, what exactly is it that you're doing? Are you studying just a little bit about what the future holds? Are you just thinking that something that maybe somebody else doesn't know or something like that? Or if anything, that if you're just checking it out or something like that, and like everybody else might even say too, that's usually the case. If you're just checking it out and just studying about the future, but still that. So it sure seems that way, that that when we talk about the future, though, if you were to write the date on there, is it wise really to go ahead and put the date on there rather than to just go and give it the title, talk about our future, future is now or something? So I say that, yeah, if anything, that would maybe be for the subverb title or something like that, but it sure seems that way that if you were to put the title on there and to put the date on there, and at 102, that a lot of everybody else might say that what the question really is to where that we're also talking about is to where if it's supposed to be a Thursday or a Friday. So let's just say if we were to use Friday in general, or like everybody else would say that no, maybe you should go ahead and use Monday in general. So let's just say that if you were to say that, go ahead and follow up with that on Monday, and I can maybe use Friday also, but I'll go ahead and just use Monday here. Use Monday right there. Monday, July 20th, and so yeah. So like everybody else might want to know too, that what is it usually? The date that you usually get. 23, and let's just say that, yeah, for Central Standard Time. For Central Standard Time right here. So if you were to put the date like that right there, and like let's just say if you're going to be using any of those programs, and it's going to show the date on there, and a lot of times it sure seems that way that not everybody is really going to know what all that means right there, and a lot of times it seems like that if that's supposed to be what you call a request or maybe a certain update or anything. But like everybody else might even say too, that if you were to put like, I don't know about the equation, but on the other hand, you want to know too that typical building blocks, that why would you want to use today's date as a message for the future? And everybody else might say that really, as long as it works, though, then I'm sure people are not going to mind, what exactly is it that the system is going to do necessarily. And you want to know, too, that, well, really, even if you were to try that out, even if we're talking about maybe, using these sorts of like, yeah, if you're trying to send that electronically, talk about for the IT technology or something like that, and say that it's maybe going to, define, undefined, or, yeah, there's going to be an error or something like that, but it sure seems that way that every time we think about the date, though, a lot of times, that if does a date, is a date supposed to include any sorts of secret message, such as toward that surprise for you, surprise for you on line or line 8 or something like that. I can just put that in general. So it sure seems that way. Yeah, surprise for you on line 8. And so it sure seems that way, that like everybody else may want to know too, that like a typical HTML wording and all that, that yeah, a lot of things that are visible to you, and like anybody else would say too, that to typical programming, no, that for what our technology does a lot of times, and that you want to know too, that it gets to be very frustrating whenever you're trying to explain to somebody about something, especially. But let's just say that if you were to be writing a letter talking about the future, though, and let's just say that if you were trying to expound, if you were trying to talk about, just kind of exaggerate about, a few examples of what you're talking about, and the first thing that you might say is toward, you want to go ahead and write the date on there, but you don't say, today, Monday, or today is Saturday, August 29th or something like that. What you put on there is Monday, July 2023, Central Standard Time or something like that. And so it sure seems that way, that every time we think about that, though, that are you the first thing that you might think about is that you may miss something, or if anything, just trying to understand something or something like that. So every time we think about that, though, is that, really, do we really need to be thinking about a date to where to set a reminder or something like that, or like, but it sure seems that way, that, that can we really think about the date to where that, that's supposed to be another way of how to, I'm like, it's, how things are really categorized and all that, but, that a lot of things that maybe that we didn't all just, a lot of things that maybe that we didn't think about, and a lot of it maybe has to do with maybe schedule updates, and like a lot of times, that's usually the case too, is that whenever you do think about, think ahead of time about something, and it's possible that people might even say too that whenever it comes to prizes, maybe special events or something like that, that you go ahead and maybe use July 20th for that reason or something. But like everybody else would say that, if it's really over the fact about you're just trying to get somewhere, you're trying to get the job done, and even though that people might say that, even though if somebody else that could be looking at your stuff, and like people might say that, well, I hope you don't mind, but I went ahead and looked over, that data from your research or something like that. So a lot of times it seems like that, whenever it comes to whenever you're working on something, that, somebody, so it sure seems that way, that while you were working on something, and then somebody, is able to, to try it out, and then if they're able to get it to working, and but still. But on your hand too, that I'm also thinking about is toward it, really, that whenever we're talking about, whenever you're trying to work on something, that you're also thinking too, is to where that whenever you're writing something and maybe working on something, that you might notice that to where that you might start writing more information, writing more ideas, and maybe you go ahead and maybe write a whole paragraph of what you're thinking about, and thinking as toward it, what exactly is it do you think that the future is saying? But it's like, a lot of this language, by the way, like anybody else would say too, that all about what is next to come. And so this right here, back whenever I was younger, and I can tell everybody here too that if I could maybe recover, I'm like, I'm not talking about no Word documents. I'm actually talking about paint, paint work. But still, any documents that I wrote those years ago, and it's like yeah, back in 1999, that it was it was an email that I was talking to my teacher about, and thinking too that what's one source of computer technique that you think that you can remember talking about, and one of those techniques is actually was about that toward that people are able to look at what you're working on, and whenever it comes to getting getting the computer to know how are you, just to be able to identify you and for how you're using it. So let's just say, on average though, that if you're going to be working from your own personal computer, or any source of device that you're using, and let's just say you start working and typing something, and then all of a sudden it's like this program no longer is not requiring you to sign in each and every time, because that they're able to identify your activity. And so it sure seems that way, that like if it's anything, maybe anything private or anything like that talked about right here or anything. And so it sure seems that way. Talk about for hard work that is measured. So it's like, so if you were working on something maybe for 3 weeks, if you were working on something, and at 102, that how do you know when a lot of your hard work is really counted for the specific training? So that's another thing that I'll go ahead and talk about right here. I talk about for hard work. So it's like somebody might even say too that you, whenever you first start working on something, you were just really just kind of getting some ideas, and just kind of helping guide somebody on how something works, and just kind of giving better thoughts and ideas about how something works. But it sure seems that way, that you really want to maybe mention about is toward that really that the purpose for this meeting right here is to just kind of give you a quick walkthrough about how something works, and then for what you can check out and all that. But at the same time, though, it seems like that even if we're talking about watching television, or maybe figuring out how to use it on our mobile phones, though, that when we're talking about that, maybe spending up to maybe 3 to 5 hours a day doing the research, and maybe having all that work that you were doing, maybe if it was maybe for 3 days straight, that with all that you were putting together, and with all that you were doing, and all that analysis that you were working with, and half the time it's like, really, hard work though. And do you have to include any sorts of sticker in between talk about for hard work right there? And everybody else might even say too that really it doesn't really make any sense to do that, and like everybody else might even want to know too that really that if you want like any sorts of facial expressions or anything like that, that if you were to include a sticker or something like that, just showing about your hard work and all that, but a lot of times we don't need to have it to where everybody's going to be getting mad because things are not getting done either, and we don't need to have it to where that it's like everybody else would say too, that talk about for any sorts of arguments, and maybe anything like that. So that's why it sure seems that way, that a document, that Word documents, that really that ever since back in the early of 1995, especially like on a Macintosh, that how is it that maybe people, somebody was able to identify the problems and all that stuff. Maybe if you did not include a sticker or something like that, or talk about for appreciation or something like that. But it sure seems that way, that whenever I talk about the future, though, I'm also talking about where the future is going. So it's like, talk about for anything that you may have missed, but still, talk about for special attention. That how often is somebody going to be treated for that special attention whenever it comes to somebody giving you the special treatment, or they're going to give you a hug, and maybe if they're going to do things for you, and And I'll even tell everybody here too that yeah, I notice that a lot to where yeah, if somebody's really want to go on a vacation or even a shopping spree for the most part, that yeah, if you're working in customer service, then it seems like a lot of times that they're wanting you to go ahead and take care of the paperwork and all, but still but it sure seems that way that when we speak about special attention though, that it's like yeah, you see a lot of those special offers and maybe discounts and maybe yeah, treating you for something special a lot of times. So and let's just say that maybe if you were maybe the oldest of the family or something like that, or maybe if you've been working for a company for a long period of time or something like that, yeah, when somebody gives you something, and so yeah, top of for special attention, and so top of for special, and I can go ahead and make it special. And I'm like, yeah, if I can go ahead and make that a little bit bigger, that way, because like everybody else would say too, that whenever it comes to taking care of your taxes and also, yeah, whenever it comes to taking care of your taxes and everything, and it sure seems that way that yeah, that a lot of paperwork though that whenever we talk about special though, can we also look at that toward it just to kind of make it easier? Yeah, that's the point. That's the whole point of the matter. When we say special, that means is that we're making it easier, more understanding, to those who have difficulty difficulties understanding. I can put difficulties also understanding the requirements. So it sure seems that way that whenever you first start working on something, you would maybe ask somebody to listen to your suggestions and your comments, anything that you really highly recommend. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that when we talk about special though, that special could be explained in a lot of ways, right? But on the other hand too, it sure seems that way that does special also mean is toward it that try not to make it so hard, to make it a little bit easier. And so like, or it could also maybe mean by is toward it yeah, talk about for the gift of kindness also, but something something about you and for what you do that maybe that yeah, so like yeah, maybe that's something that maybe counselors come in like yeah, psychology or anything like that. But it sure seems that way that whenever we speak about special though, that anything that you may have missed on, but still. So it's like yeah, there's 1 minute to where that somebody's gonna be real nice to you and maybe ask for a favor or something like that, and there's gonna be some times that there's gonna be somebody that's gonna be like say, hey, I'll something like that, I'll send but yeah, whenever it comes to a gift card or maybe a gift of appreciation or something like that. So a lot of times it's like yeah, whenever especially whenever I read my emails, especially. I tell people too that be quite honest with you, everybody, that it's mainly the emails especially. Emails, I almost all the time whenever you read your emails that it's going to you're going to be getting messages about yeah, but Most of the time, some of them are private emails, but still that the reason to why you use that email most of the time is so that way you can communicate with information about your job research and all that, or maybe if it is related to something else important, such as maybe a letter from the doctor or something like that. But it sure seems that way, that like everybody else might want to know too, that yeah, you could probably change it in the settings, right? But it's like you want to know too that only yeah, if you were to say something like that on there, yeah, only tell me the basics or something like that. So it's like, yeah, if you're going to have an email address, a lot of times it sure seems that way, to where you get all kinds of stuff in mail, but still that but on the other hand too, it's like yeah, that whenever you do read the email, a lot of times it sure seems that way, that are people really asking you for a lot of assistance? A lot of times, are they just asking you for your feedback, or are they a lot of times asking you to write a review? I'm like, yeah, look at this here and let me know what you think. And so a lot of times it's like and whenever you do start writing out a Word document right here, and what I see going on in the future is actually related to text messaging and email service a lot of times. Using chat. So it's like the source of communication, though. The source of communication that I actually see is most of the time it's all related to the chat and text and all that. Then compared to maybe other things that I've seen, and the other things that I have seen are like is toward it usually. It may take about maybe 2 or 3 business days just to get a response from somebody there in the tech support team about anything, any problems that that you got questioned about and all that. But let's just say that like with the chat though, that if you were to include something like special needs for this, and maybe if you were to change the categories to where like, yeah, point of perspective. And if you were writing there, like maybe a little memo, right, like a memo right there about what is it that, how can I help you or something like that. So it sure seems that way, that every time I think about that though, and you want to know too that, how does it come from this point of perspective to this point of perspective? Because the reason for this conversation right here, may have been talking about is toward to be able to how to prove the technology. But then this part right here actually talks about is toward it that somebody's actually trying to connect with you, on social media, or if anything that they're inviting you to participate in this meeting. And so it sure seems that way, that the way we think about that, where's our future heading? A lot of times, and a lot of times it seems like that, to where that, yeah, I think so, that that whenever you do, if you're going to have, yeah, like a phone directory to where that you're going to be connected with, somebody's going to be inviting you to participate, they're able to find your email address or your phone number, from a directory, from an online directory, and then they're able to directly connect with you, and they say that, yeah, well, and I know a lot of times it's a zip code too. The zip code, your date of birth and your zip code, a lot of times. This is usually what I see, everybody, and I can be honest with everybody here too. It's the date of birth, along with your zip code. So it sure seems that way, that whenever you talk about certain, I'm like, yeah, so it's like your zip code, date of birth, and so it's like a lot of times it sure seems that way, that when we speak about the future, a lot of times that what I usually see about the future, one of them is to where that, yeah, have my own computer to where I can do my own studies and just to figure out, okay, the things that I know, that I had the capability of learning, and whenever it comes to being at my computer, being able to make phone calls and being able to play games and that sorts of stuff. But nowadays it seems like that yeah, your own information that's being exposed to a lot of these marketing companies, and maybe if it's anything about, yeah, politics, and maybe also anything else that's related to about the fact about, yeah, your information that's being exposed to people, yeah, trying to sell information or something like that. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that yeah, whenever it comes to special treatment, you may see a little bit of that if somebody is trying to get information from you, so that way they can go ahead and take care of something else that they're trying to take care of. But at the same time, though, it's like, yeah, well, really, how are you able to meet people in the community, somebody in the community or so, and at least if you don't follow these 3 simple steps or something. But like everybody else might even say too, that yeah, if somebody's going to be looking at your stuff, of course they don't know what you're working on until that they're able to read and review the details right there and just say that, hey, that's interesting. And so it sure seems that way, that yeah, that I can put on here, like on the bottom right here, for that's interesting. So if I were to, yeah, that's interesting. So if I were to be writing a few paragraphs right here on at the top and at the very bottom right here, most companies would think about the future, which should always be about how and who manages the company. And so, like anybody say, is toward, yeah, that's interesting, and I can go and maybe put like a quotations or something like that right there. But it's like, yeah, that so after you get done with writing in about maybe 400 words, and let's just say that if you started with maybe for the first 5 paragraphs right there and just start writing. And then you're probably thinking too that yeah, anybody else that could be reading this, and but it's like yeah, if it becomes interesting to somebody, and I just want to know too that they are all operated, but on the other hand, years ahead, and understanding computers and what the computers So another way of how you want to look at that, to where our computers are our managers, right? The computers and systems are basically our managers. They're the captain of the internet, if you want to kind of call it. The captain of the internet. So if we're talking about captain of the internet, so anything that you're trying to get the computers to correspond to, and most of the time, you know how that is. If you're waiting for a delivery, or maybe if you ordered something online a lot of times, and it's like, yeah, so it's like you want to know too for anything special. But the way I think about it too is toward it, yeah, you start writing about something, but still writing any sorts of cover letter or anything like that. But on the other hand too, that when we speak about attention though, that special attention, anything that you missed. And so it's like anybody say that, any sorts of advice that you have to give, and want to know too that, yeah, well, really, that if you're trying to follow up with anything that you may miss from over the weekend, while you were on vacation or something like that, and want to know too, do you really feel bad, just by missing something and that you're trying to follow up? And but like everybody say that, yeah, well, really, that just to kind of make you feel better, is like everybody else would say, is toward that, yeah, that I'm sure that there's going to be other opportunities too that you can follow up with, but anyway, but thanks for watching, everyone. I have right here, like, talk for the hard work and all that, but that's something I just want to mention everybody here about, is talk about for special attention. So like almost all the time, I'm going to be reading it on the applications, a lot of the applications I fill out, and it seems like that most of the time it's the senior citizens who get a lot of the attention. But on your hand, that to me though, that's just like if there's going to be an 8-year-old that's going to maybe be saying that they just finished kindergarten and they're waiting for their attention, or something like that. But But a lot of times it seems like that to where that, yeah, well, really, that, whenever we speak about attention, though, that, whenever you're filling out an app, if you're really are that desperate, to receive something, and a lot of times everybody else would say too that, you would usually see that a lot of times, is that, if you were really, were waiting for that special gift to be delivered or something to be received, then, say for any source of special attention, such a, yeah, pretty please or something like that. People might say that, yeah, well, go, if you want to go and write that down. Really. Pretty please, yeah, pretty please. So yeah, how many of us would probably say if you're gonna have kids, I'm like, yeah, that's gonna maybe say, pretty please with sugar on top. What does that mean? I want to know too if you even spell it with sugar on top. What exactly does that mean? I can put on here real quick. Pretty please with sugar on top. That means is to where that, yeah, it means is to where it's a request. Yeah, or I look at it more like as a request by your obey. So a lot of times it seems like, yeah, a request by your obey. To me, that seems like to me that that's really what it means when somebody says that, to where that you follow my request in order, and like so yeah. A lot of times it's like, yeah, people may want to know too. Do you think that maybe, like everybody else would say too, that yeah, well, do you think that even the president, could he? But still, but on your hand, that whenever we talk about for pretty please on with sugar on top or something like that, so it sure seems that way that when somebody says that something like that, request to by your obey or something. So yeah, so whenever somebody orders something and requests something, that it's like they're telling you that are you well? I'm like, yeah, it's another way of how do you want to cause this to where they're, that person is going to give you the special treatment for whatever you want as long as you obey. I'm like, yeah, you be cooperative or something like that. Yeah, you be polite and then you listen up and you be nice and so yeah, so that's usually, I guess they say that that's another way of how do you want to look at it. Be nice and yeah, you be nice and so yeah, pretty pleased with sugar on top and so yeah, so it sure seems that way that like if you're going to be getting into the any source of conversation really, and at 102 that really that. Somebody I'm like, but still, but on your hand, that it sure seems that way. That yeah, it's important to get the jobs done a lot of times, but it sure seems that way toward it. That when we talk about for special and attention a lot of times, and you want to know too, that is toward it. Yeah, well, somebody is going to be nice, and for sure. They're going to treat you well, really, most of the time. Is it to where if they know something that you can do that they can't, they can't do, they can't do it alone. And so a lot of times it's like, yeah, pay a favor most of the time, but still. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. And, hope that's some good advice right there. For attention right there. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. But on your hand, I'm like, yeah, but all about you, and then also about the point of perspective, and pretty please, and then talk about for the zip code right there. But now I don't know if everybody really wants like, yeah, go ahead and zoom in just to see what that says right there. On our smartphones, now have that ability to where you can identify somebody that you could not have the details, and with just yet that's something that they will be asked to explain for the details. So it's like, yeah, a lot of times you want to know too that can you explain that a little bit more about what you mean about that? But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.